So recently I've been working about 40 hours per week as a teacher and a tutor. I've also been studying for my UCAT. I've also been making YouTube content, Instagram content, and TikTok content. Links down below if you're not following me on those platforms yet. Today we're gonna go through 5 time management techniques to help you be more productive and to do a side project or a side hustle after your 9 to 5 is actually over. The first time management tip is to do something known as time blocking on an app like Apple Calendar or Google Calendar. Essentially, time blocking is where you block off a period of time inside of your calendar where you protect this time and you actually do something productive during this time. So for example, if I want to plan to do my UCAT practice from 6 to 8, I would time block this on side of my calendar and I'll make sure to put reminders in there so that I know when I come home during 6 to 8 p.m. is when I'm going to be studying for my UCAT. I think the biggest tip that I have for you with time blocking is to be less ambitious than you think you're going to be, especially when you have a full-time job and when you come home, you're going to be very, very tired when you actually get home. And maybe start work at about 8 o'clock once you've decompressed, you've relaxed a little bit, and you've eaten some food. And then you can actually use that 8 to 10 p.m. block to actually do something productive. The second time management tip that I have for you is to stop making to-do lists. Now, to-do lists are kind of clunky and it's kind of daunting, especially when you have a lot of things on your to-do list. You feel unsuccessful if you don't tick everything off on your to-do list. And so what I would recommend that you do instead is to have a might-do list. Now, a might-do list are things that you might do throughout the day, not that you have to do throughout the day. But what I would recommend that you combine this with is something like a top priority list. Normally, the way that I set this out is I put my top 3 priorities for the day. So today, my top priorities are to make this YouTube video, to work out, and to study for my UCAT. Now, on my might-do list is to clean my room, to clean the toilet, and do some other things as well. Now, these aren't the top of my priority list, meaning there are going to be other days where I can actually do it. It removes that expectation and the pressure that you have all of these things that you kind of have to tick off. And what I found is that over the period of time, it has allowed for me to own my choices. If I don't want to make this YouTube video today, there's no pressure. I don't have to if I don't want to. If I force myself to make a YouTube video if I don't want, then it's not going to be good. So there's no point. So stop making to-do lists. Make a might-do list instead. It's going to be so much better. The third time management tip that I have for you, which is an absolute game changer, is to use the Pomodoro technique. Now, I've talked about this quite extensively. I've also done a study with me if you want to check that out as well. Essentially, the Pomodoro technique is where you study for 25 minutes and you have 5-minute breaks. It's a really, really good technique in order to help you get started with something rather than an actual study technique. And the reason why that is because a lot of the time, the most difficult thing with studying and doing something is actually getting started. And so what the Pomodoro technique really excels in is convincing yourself to do a short study session, which is only like 25 minutes long. And so if you can convince yourself to do 25 minutes, what you'll find is that you are much more likely in order to actually stick with it. And you might notice that you might work for like 2 to 3 hours in a row without really stopping. And you've kind of convinced yourself to do this regardless. You're like, wow, I've had all of this energy inside of me to do all of this work, but where was this? Speaking of techniques, I'd really appreciate it if you left me a thumbs up, especially if you found value from this video. The fourth tip that I have for you, which is not really a time management tip, it's more so a tip that I have for you, especially if you want to come home from your day job and work on a side project or a side hustle in your free time. The tip that really helps me with this is that I stopped actually listening to music on my way home. I have to drive about an hour from my work back to home. And so what I noticed at the beginning when I was listening to music, it was really, really difficult for me to get into the zone when I got home, because when I was listening to music, I was kind of decompressing, I was relaxing. And so as a result, when I got home, I wasn't in the mood, I really didn't want to do any work. And so what I actually started doing instead was I started listening to podcasts. What I find is that when I get home, I find it really easy to get into the zone. I can do work a lot easier. And so what I found is that this is a really underrated tip that I use every single day when I come home from work. The fifth time management tip that I have for you is to understand something known as Parkinson's law. Essentially, what this law states is that tasks will fill to expand the time that is allocated to them. So for example, if you're writing an essay and you give yourself 2 hours to write this essay, you're probably going to complete it in those 2 hours where you're going to be hyper-focused and just continuously working and writing. But if you give that essay a week to do it, it's going to take the entire week in order to complete that essay. You're going to break it up and you're probably only going to complete the work in the last day, the last 5 hours, the last 2 hours, and it's going to be a lot less efficient if you were to constrain the time to a shorter period of time. The reason why this is really important is that if you give your side project a very long time in order to complete it. So for example, what I said to myself at the beginning was that I needed the entire week in order to record and edit a YouTube video, but then my time got more and more constrained. And so I told myself that I only have 2 days to record, edit, and post an entire YouTube video. And what I noticed over the last like 3 weeks to a month is that I can edit and post a video in like 2 days. And so what that really taught me is that Parkinson's law is real and active. You can work a lot faster and more efficient if you constrain the amount of time that you give yourself. So those were the 5 time management tips that I have for you in order to work on a side hustle while you're actually working full time. I know it's really difficult and it's not for everyone, so I definitely would not recommend that everyone pick these time management techniques. However, what I would recommend is that you continue watching these videos over here. Otherwise, there's also this video right here, which I definitely recommend. I'll see you over there.